So here we are, we're talking about how your conversations and your communication, they actually direct the course of your life. They impact it in a way that no other attribute or characteristic or thing that you do has nearly the impact or the influence that your communication do. Not only does social science say that today, but the Bible has a lot to say about that as well. It says in Proverbs 18, 20 and 21, it says, with the fruit of a man's mouth, his stomach will be satisfied. So we talked about it in detail, but the point is, by the things he says, he acquires a job, he makes relationships, he can provide a living for his family. And so that's the fruit of his mouth, is his ability to earn wages, and his stomach is satisfied. And it goes on in the next verse. The rest of the verse to say, he will be satisfied with the product of his lips, not just his stomach, but the man himself will have satisfaction because his relationships are healthy. His marriage, children, family, friends, everything like that. There's great satisfaction in being able to communicate. I didn't say this last week, but as you read all the scriptures on communication in the Bible, and there are a whole lot of them, Proverbs alone has just bunches, over 25 just on how to listen. But I want to say this because we have different levels of education. I have some friends where we worshiped in Auburn. One was illiterate. Another just had an 8th grade education, not by her choice even, but her mom kept her home and she wasn't able to go to school. My point is this: we don't all have the same ability to read. We don't all have the same education level or vocabulary. And the vocabulary is almost immaterial. Larry Haverstock, one of the finest vocabularies I've ever known. We used to play this little game and he would always win, using synonyms and fancy words for things to make it more complicated to understand each other. Anyway, your vocabulary, it's almost immaterial. As we look at the 6 steps to better listening, and then we'll look at 5 on better speaking, we'll see that it really has to do with your connection with people, how you honor them and how you treat them, and the things you say and the things you don't say. So just in case you're saying, well, I don't have that great a vocabulary, big deal. It really just doesn't have that much influence on your ability to communicate, and that directs your life. In the next verse it says, death and life are in the power of the tongue. Woo. And those who love it will eat its fruit. So your words, life and death. In the book of James, chapter 3, I think it's verse 7, it says, and the tongue is set on, your tongue sets on fire the course of your life and is set on fire by hell. It's telling you the great negative impact you can have with your words. But the cool thing is, we also had the power of life, because we can tell people about the awesomeness of our God and how to be saved and bring people eternal life. So I'm just saying it is so critical that we communicate biblically on using the principles that we're given right there. It's just the greatest determiner of our influence and our income and our family and career, relationships, almost everything that's important. Our communication affects it, and the cool thing is we all have the ability to improve if we choose to. Even those of you that are exception to good, and there are several of you that are. If you want a better and better life, if you want better and better relationships, work on communication, both the speaking and the listening in reverse order. A couple of things I want to run by. I don't have much time this morning, so I'm trying to decide what to review and what not to. All communication boils down to two fundamental skills: listening, speaking. That's it. Two fundamental skills. And how can you listen better how can you listen better so that people will want to talk to you? I love that question. I didn't make it up. I read it somewhere. How can you listen better that people will want to talk to you? And how can you speak better so that people will want to listen to you? I just think these are great questions right there. James 1:19 says, "This you know, my beloved brother, but everyone must be quick to hear, slow to speak, and slow to anger." The quick to hear, I don't think you can speed up your hearing, but when it says to be quick to hear, it means eager. I mean, you look for the opportunity, because we always have the opportunity to make noise and talk, but when someone else is there, we're eager to hear them. And we give that priority over speaking. Using our own words is listening to them. So quickly, we're going to use an acrostic, the word listen, and the L we studied last week. And it's a reminder that when we speak to people, we want to look at them with love. We had the example in Mark 10, starting around verse 41, of Jesus and the rich young ruler that approached him. And it's so powerful. It says, looking at him, Jesus felt a love for him. And that love is just the idea that we want to value them. We want to see their worth just the same way that God does. When Jesus was willing to give his life for people, we want to see them that valuable. That's the kind of love we're talking about. Because it motivates the words we use, it motivates our body language, it motivates our attitude towards the person. And I've just never thought of that until a couple of weeks ago, and I'm implementing it. I'm going, whoa! I think I'm already a little bit better. It's affecting. When I look at a person and maybe I think they've done something really stupid, an employee or a relative or myself, and I look at them and it just makes such a difference. So I got to move on, but I'll say this in 1 Corinthians 13:1, I don't think I even have it listed for you. It just talks about that if we speak with the tongues of men and angels, but we don't have love, we're nothing but a clanging cymbal. So the point is that words without love are noise. That's all. Just noise. This is key. This is number one, most important. Look at them with love. Number two, I'm going to go through that quickly. Number two is invest as much time as needed. We have the great example of Job. Not the example of him suffering, but when Job is suffering greater than maybe anybody that ever has, I don't know, but a great sufferer. His friends came. He was so, not only was his emotional pain from losing all of his children and other things happening, but he was so hideous looking. When his friends saw him, they sat down, they wept, they threw dust on their head, and no one spoke for a week, 7 days. The point there is, just reminding that the more intense, the more serious, traumatic the event that has happened to a friend, the less we speak, the fewer words we use. And again, there's great judgment here, brothers and sisters. Every situation is different. They may say, will you pray for me? Will you read the book of Psalms with me? But the more deeper their pain, the less we speak. So invest as much time as needed. Today, share their feelings. If you're in an important conversation and maybe there's conflict or tension or they're just grieving, share their feelings, not your solutions. Oh, how difficult this is. And if you read about marriage, it's more difficult for most men than it is women. We want to fix stuff. So a friend says, oh, Mike, I want to make a career change, but I'm afraid because I don't have talents in any other area, but my boss is a monster, and I'm just unhappy there. I'm not making up. And listen, first what you do is you read some books, and then you take an online commuter course, and especially men, if your wives come to you with a problem. And you can tell on me, honey, I'm a little teeny bit better, but we want to fix stuff. So as soon as, women too, as soon as we hear about a problem, I know how to fix that. Hey, let me tell you. And that's not how you do it. It just doesn't work. We have biblical examples and lots of study on this. But you want to share their feelings. So Romans 12:15, rejoice with those who rejoice, and weep with those who weep. Be of the same mind toward one another. Do not be haughty in mind, but associate with the lowly. Do not be wise in your own estimation. So you share their emotion. If they're in trauma, they're grieving, share that with them. Weep with them. You don't have to fake it. If you can't weep at the moment, comfort them, acknowledge their grief just with your presence. Counselors call it the ministry of presence. Just by being there, you're serving them. The service of presence. So Job's friends, I told you how just minutes ago how good they did. They come to their friend, they see him, he's suffering greatly. They sit down for a week in silence out of respect. Just the service of presence, comforting him. But then they blow it badly. Look at what Eliphaz says to Job. He says, remember now, whoever perished being innocent? Or where were the upright destroyed? Well, I'll tell you where the upright were destroyed. How about Abel, a righteous man who was killed by his brother? But Eliphaz's point is this. You know why you're suffering? And you can see it in context. You know why you're suffering, Job? Because you're a hideous man. You're the world's worst sinner. You're a terrible excuse for a human being or a God. He's not sharing Job's feelings. And he's not even giving good advice. He's pounding on a man who's suffering immeasurably. His other friends do the same thing. I'll only give you one more, though. Bildad, the Shuhite, in Job 8:3 says, does God pervert justice? Or does the Almighty pervert what is right? Look at what he says now. Job has just had all 10 children crushed by a house that caved in on them. He lost, imagine what it is to lose one child, and some of us had. But he lost all 10, and he loved them deeply. You can see from the scriptures. So he says, if your son sinned against him, then he delivered them into the power of their transgression. In other words, he's saying that your children deserve to die. They transgressed because God never perverts justice. He would never allow anyone to die that's righteous. Hogwash. And as we know the backstory on this, we see that wasn't true at all. But they're pounding him. I mean, if you lost your 10 sons and you're in terrible physical pain, which is worse? I would assume the emotional pain of losing all your children would be. And they're perverting justice themselves. God's very angry with them. If you read the whole book in chapter 42, you'll see later. But they're failing now. They did the ministry of presence, and then they're pounding the man that needs comforting, a man that needs to have his feelings shared with those that are close to him. Now, here's a positive example in 1 Samuel 20 and verses 1 through 9, which was our reading today. But in short, this is what happened. David says, your dad tried to kill me. Jonathan says, no way. He'd tell me. So in verse 3, David made a vow. No, your dad's trying to kill me. Now, Jonathan hasn't agreed yet, but I want you to notice his words. When David said, no, I swear to you, your dad's trying to kill me. Jonathan said to David, whatever you say, I will do for you. That's awesome. What do you need, my brother? You just tell me and I'll do it. That's sharing the feelings and acknowledging, even if he doesn't know what David said is accurate or not, how important this is, and he's sympathizing. Now later on, Jonathan goes to his dad. He asks, what has David done wrong? His dad throws a spear at his own son. Verse 1 Samuel 20:41. When the lad was gone, they had a little signal on if it was safe to come out or not for David because he was hiding. David arose from the south side and fell on his face to the ground and bowed 3 times. And they kissed each other like they do in Italy. You know, how, I don't know, but that kind of a kiss. They kissed each other and wept together. But David wept more. Weep with those who weep. Rejoice with those who rejoice. Very biblical. Share their feelings, not your solutions. You're on the list. We're in the listening mode right now. You'll have plenty of time. If they want your advice, they'll ask for it. When my kids, I gave way too much advice when my kids were at home. Way too much. All the time. Correcting out of love, of course, because I thought it was. And I realized before the last 2 were gone, I'd overdone it. And I said to myself, once they leave the house, I'm stopping with the advice. And they all live close. In fact, 2 of them right now, because of COVID, ones are living with us. And I might give them unasked for advice once a year, max. People will ask for it if they want it, but share their feelings, their joy, or their grief. I have a very painful memory. I'm going to share it with you. 20 years ago, 2 close friends came to our home to tell us that my best friend was dying. He was the husband. He had a deadly disease, and you know, we listened for a while, but I loved them. And I didn't want them to go away sad, so I wanted to encourage them and give them advice. So I did, and it's absolutely not what they needed and absolutely not what they wanted. They were so classy. They've never said a thing, but my wife did. She says, honey, you know, they wanted to be loved, and they wanted just you to be with them and grieve with them. Lesson hopefully learned. That was a big deal. I failed to share in their feelings, as the Bible instructs us. 1 Peter 3:8, to sum up, all of you be harmonious, sympathetic, brotherly, kind-hearted, and humble in spirit. That sympathetic right there means to feel the pain, but also in the Greek word means understanding. Wow. Now, whether you agree with them or not, whether you think they should be grieving at the point or over this, or they'll get over, understanding that they are in great pain. Just like the Bible says 1 verse earlier, husbands, live with your wives in an understanding manner. Not the boss. You know, you're not the slave master. None of us are the source of all the good advice in the world. We're to live with them in an understanding manner and share their emotions when appropriate. So the next one. So I've been up here about 20 minutes or so. I'm thinking I'm going to move on, save some of this for next week and make it a week longer than planned on. I was really long last week, and I realized that, and I'm sharing in your emotions, the pain you had to go through last week when I spoke so long. So I'll do some. You do want to turn into any hurt, the fear beneath their words. This is a big deal, and listen. Listen's insulting. Please listen. This next step right here is for master communicators. This next step is for those that are extremely mature Christians. And last week when I told you, I looked at these things and was studying for a month or so, and I said, whoa, I fall short big time in a couple areas. This is one of them. That's the preface. Now let me explain, please. Tune into any hurt, the fear beneath their words. So a lot of times, you maybe talk to somebody and they're full of fear, anxiety, hurt, frustration, even anger. Ever done it yourself? Ever had a really bad day? So, when you see somebody in your family or somebody close to you, you're sharp with them, and they've done nothing wrong, but you kind of vent a little bit on somebody that's totally innocent. Well, I hope you can't raise your hand, but I certainly can. I've done that. The story about Kick the Dog, which we'll maybe talk about some other day. It's pretty easy to be sympathetic towards someone who's afraid. Pretty easy to be sympathetic to someone who's hurt, who's worried, who has some of those. But it's much more difficult for most of us to be sympathetic to someone who's angry at us and mean to us, using sharp words. And maybe they're undeserved totally, maybe they're not, but it's just hard to be sympathetic with someone who's attacking us. But since some of you have shared with me the experience of being in a really bad mood, having a bad day and taking it out on somebody who's innocent, some of you have done that yourselves. Remember that when you're listening to someone, you want to tune in. You want to be looking for what's causing this anger, because sometimes they're insulting. Sometimes an angry person that we know and love treats us poorly. And they raise an issue that may not even be related to their anger. So they've had a really terrible day, and so we don't close the microwave door. Now, Lisa has never hit me once for not doing this, but we don't do something small that they don't like, and so they maybe raise that, and it's out of proportion to the crime committed. Well, since a lot of you have done that, and I certainly have, remember that other people do that. So if we can remember, what's causing that pain, that hurt, that fear, that frustration? What's behind that? Because this is out of proportion. I don't think it's because I didn't close the microwave door. So we dig in, we try to find out what the cause is. Jonathan said to David, what can I do? You tell me what to do, and I'll do it. We humble ourselves. So difficult when they're attacking us because we want to defend ourselves. We think we're innocent sometimes anyway, or undeserving of this kind of wrath. But what a mature person it takes to humble themselves and say, I don't think this is about me. I don't think this is about the situation they're talking about. I think there's something bigger, something deeper, and we look for that. And we continue looking at them with eyes and say, I don't want this person to be in pain. And I don't want our relationship to be in pain. And so we say, I'm going to stay calm. I'm going to share the feelings. I'm going to invest whatever time it's going to take right now. I'm going to look at them with love, and we're going to get through this. And so in Acts 15:37, I think this is an example of that. Barnabas and Paul were going to go on a missionary journey. Barnabas wanted to take John, called Mark, along with him also. But Paul kept insisting they should not take him along, who had deserted them in Pamphylia and had not gone with them to the work. And there occurred such a sharp disagreement. These are two men of great faith, Paul and Barnabas. And there occurred such a sharp disagreement that they separated from one another. And Barnabas took Mark with him and sailed away to Cyprus. What's that all about? These are men that have people skills. And they simply blew it right here. This is recorded for us because even the best people sometimes slip and fall. But there's no reason they had to separate or have a sharp disagreement. You know, Paul could have said, Barnabas, don't remember how he stranded us? He left us. We were waiting for a ride. We're in a hostile area. He was supposed to come with horses or a cart or whatever. I'm just making this up. But don't you remember that? I mean, our lives were in danger. I can't trust this guy. I'm afraid it might happen again. And Barnabas said, look, he's matured. That was 2 years ago or however long it was ago. And he is godly and it's wrong not to take him because God forgives, lest us forgive. Whatever it was, they could have resolved it peacefully and they did not. They had such a sharp disagreement, these two men of great faith separated. Now God used it for good, right? Now instead of 2 people on a missionary journey, he had 4. 2 went this way, 2 went that way. God used it for good. But it shouldn't have happened. But it does. Out of proportion. So we just need to have that in our minds. If they're saying something offensive, we're going to be a great listener. We want to look past their words. Look past their words, past things they're saying because they're probably hurt. Looking for whatever they're afraid of, insecure about, and sympathetic to people who are hurting, fearful, frustrated. That takes a very mature person. It's probably the one I need to work on. It doesn't happen real often, right? So you don't get to practice this every day. But how important it is. And just remember, if you've ever been if you were ever the perpetrator, you know, you've lost proportion and you're frustrated and take it on the person that doesn't deserve it. And I know you have. You've dealt with people that stayed calm and loving. I'm really sorry, they might say. I did not mean to offend you. What can I do to make it right? When a Christian does that, they act out of love and they show great class, it impacts the other person. Whether they admit it at the time because they're so frustrated and mad and all this, but they won't forget that. And we've done good just by our example. Tune in to any hurt. That's the T in listen. The fear beneath their words. Here's a couple that really pertain to this. 1 Peter 3:9 says, not returning evil for evil or insult for insult, but giving a blessing instead. Like I said, one of the more challenging aspects of communication, godly communication. Giving a blessing instead, for you were called for the very purpose that you might inherit a blessing. So does anybody know, you don't have to say it, but I'm just going to ask you, test your mind. So 1 Peter 3, 1 through 7 is on a very specific topic. A very specific topic, 1 through 7. And then it goes on to say, you know, be sympathetic and understanding and kind-hearted. And then it goes to this verse. It says, don't return evil for evil. Raise your hand if you don't speak, but just raise your hand if you think you remember what the context of 1 Peter 3, 1 through 7 is. Because it's marriage. It's marriage. And who's more likely to offend each other than people that spend their whole lives together and have some bad days once in a while, right? So even though it applies in every situation to every person, Christian or not, this absolutely applies to our marriages. Don't return insult for insult or evil for evil, but a blessing instead. Ecclesiastes 7:21, also, do not take seriously all words which are spoken, so that you will not hear your servant cursing you. 22, for you also have realized that you likewise have many times cursed others. So there are going to be people that unrightfully hurt our feelings, that unrightfully attack us when we're not at fault in that situation anyway. And God, in the book of Ecclesiastes, the Holy Spirit says, you know, don't take it too seriously. You've done the same thing. And then another scripture, Proverbs 19:11, a person's in this case, a man's discretion makes him slow to anger, and it is his glory to overlook a transgression. Like I said, I need some work in this area. This is for a master communicator that I hope we will all become in the near future. That's where we're going to end for today. It's about 17 minutes after 11, according to this clock right here. But I hope, I was going to say this at the end of the lesson, and it isn't finished, but I'll say it now. We've looked at 4 things so far. L, look at them with love. I, invest as much time as needed. If it's important, it's needed. S, share their feelings, not your solutions. T, tune in. Tune into their hurt or their emotions, not their words. So I'm just going to say this. Why not go home and just figure out which one you're in the greatest need of? And where did it go? There's all 6. Which one you're in the greatest need of? And maybe work on one. Choose one. Not all 6. If you need help working all 6, too much. But focus on one that maybe you need the most. And just test yourself. Up. Okay, there they are. Thank you, Bill. I'm looking at, there's 2 screens. You're looking at the wrong one. So with that, we'll close down for today. And I'll just thank you for listening, because that's what our topic was today. And I hope it's been valuable to you. I've certainly learned quite a bit in the last month while I've been working on this. And may God bless you as you bless others and listen to them and love them, invest time into them and share their feelings and tune in. Not to their words, but to where they're at emotionally. If you are not a Christian, why not change that today? If you need our prayers, whatever your spiritual needs are, let's stand, sing the song of invitation. Please come forward and let us know what you need.